Hi, I'm Nanmure and this is Neuroscience of Everything. To get your weekly dose of neuroscience back tips and hacks, subscribe now. Our lives are full of surprises, good, bad and ugly ones. When confronted with unpredictable changes and the associated uncertainty, we panic and get anxious. Sometimes we fret and wonder, we could have been better prepared only if we could predict this change. Why are we afraid of changes? And what is the best strategy to deal with them in uncertain times like this? I will elaborate on the neuroscience behind our counterproductive reactions to change and try to provide science-backed actionable tips to deal with it effectively. Why do we fear change so much in the first place? Change is unavoidable and it inevitably brings uncertainty with it. Uncertainty fuels a cascade of negative emotions, ranging from mild anxiety to downright fear in response to perceived change. Our brains are perfect predictive machines due to their capacity to imagine all the possible things that could happen. However, when we lack enough information on what the change may bring, more often than not, we resort to all negative scenarios. The more uncertainty there is, the more likely gloomy hypotheticals and overfixation on the worst-case scenarios. The vast body of neuroscience research treats uncertainty as an error in the equation of predicting scenarios by the brain. There is so much ambiguity one can deal with without making a grave judgment error. A recent study very elegantly states that a lot of cognition is really about handling different types of uncertainty. And as cognitive capacities vary between individuals, so do the threshold to process uncertainty. Some of us devise better strategies to deal with ambiguous information than others. But most of us choose the easy way out. Just avoid it. This avoidance can be debilitating, similar to learned helplessness, and has a name too: metathesiophobia. On a lighter note, the naming convention for diseases follows two very simple criteria. First, difficult to spell, and second, even more difficult to pronounce for anyone who does not hold a doctorate. What leaders usually do in the face of change? Our natural evolutionary instinct is to avoid change as much as possible. However, change is sometimes absolutely necessary or just imposed by changing world around you. Luckily, most of us are only responsible for managing and preparing ourselves for the impending change. But some of us are at the helm of either executing that much needed change or dealing with it for whole organization and sometimes countries. Any leader responsible for strategizing the future of their company or a country operates under the illusion that the key to great strategy is predicting future and being prepared for it. I call it an illusion because predicting the future is roughly as easy as predicting the length of summer in Scottish Highlands. In ours, of course, forecasting and meteorology are almost inseparable, and no wonder meteorologist Edward Lorenz described a profound phenomenon called butterfly effect. He demonstrated that small differences in a complex system can have massive consequences. It is often quoted in popular culture to signify how the tiniest event have a rippling effect to cause much larger events to occur. For example, a butterfly can flap its wings in Peking, and in Central Park, you get rain instead of sunshine. Most of these trendy social media quotes, ironically enough, leaves out a tiny but significant part of Lorenz's original conclusion. Small differences in a complex system can have massive consequences or none at all. Yes, none at all is an equally significant possibility. This means unless one has a perfect, complete picture of existing conditions and variables, it is virtually impossible to predict which will turn out to be the case. It truly challenges the basis of forecasting. An approximate specification of initial condition might not yield an approximate prediction of future outcomes. With the advent of immense computational power and artificial intelligence-based tools, we may hope to get better at forecasting in the future. However, don't take it as my personal forecast. For now, our world is more complex than ever before. And relying on forecasting future changes as a strategy to plan for a better future is simply not practical. So, what should one do? Especially when you are responsible for more than yourself. What is the best strategy when operating under extreme uncertainty? We may turn to Mother Nature and its carefully crafted evolutionary masterpiece, our bodies. Every cell in our body works together in a concerted manner to adapt constantly changing external environments by a process called homeostasis. To put it simply, homeostasis is the self-regulating process by which biological systems maintain a steady state, irrespective of changing external conditions. The process of homeostasis makes a fundamental building block to what we might refer loosely as intelligence. Intelligence is nothing but the ability to adapt to change quickly enough to survive, prosper, and propagate. It remained true for millions of years of evolution, and it does not feel dated even now. If it is impossible to predict what the future may bring, the only way one can navigate it successfully is by adapting quickly and dynamically in response to change. Several developmental physiologists argue that homeostasis is a mechanism of evolution. We can learn a thing or two and utilize it to cope with volatility under which we are forced to chart the future path. The success of homeostasis lies in three main aspects: inherent flexibility, feedback regulation, and dynamic planning. How can individuals and companies bring these homeostasis principles into their actions and be adaptable to new changes? There are three practical tips to get better at adapting. First, foster and encourage flexibility. Things evolve as time passes and more information becomes available. The same is true for everything else in life. Projects, clients, expectations, relationships, and responsibilities all evolve and demand different skill set from you to navigate them successfully. Flexibility is your friend and a great asset in these volatile times. Individuals with inherent flexibility in terms of planning almost always cope better with changing expectations compared to the ones with rigid outlook. Some of us are inherently more flexible than others, but creating a culture where flexibility is fostered and valued is a joint responsibility. One thing I personally use is mental flexibility thought experiments. I evaluate mental readiness for a few most likely outcomes, let's say 1, 2, and 3. I evaluate how might I deal with one or the other if it becomes a reality. I'm not going to lie. It is mildly uncomfortable to do so. I often gravitated to more negative scenarios, but with practice, learn to balance the pessimism-realism ratio. I highly recommend it. Do give it a try and share experiences in the comment section below. Second, feedback loop. Use information as it becomes available. Our brains do a phenomenal job at deciphering ambiguous information to make inferences about what's happening in the world. The important part of this process is feeding new, updated information to the system. It will automatically account for new information and adapt the predictions. Our confidence in given conclusions can be constantly validated by a new stream of information. If we make it accessible and part of the process, we won't miss any crucial strategy-altering information. For example, set up micro goals and schedule time to check the ground truth. Allow yourself to amend the plans, estimates, and expectations accordingly. Third, dynamic planning. I fretted over how unpredictable the world has become. Although it is tempting to give up on planning altogether, it is highly advisable to plan. Success is rarely the result of serendipity. To better cope with extreme volatility in crafting strategies, one needs to adapt the static planning process to more dynamic ones. What I mean by dynamic planning is leave some leeway in a plan to be amended based on the evolving situations. The more such avenues to account for unplanned detours, the more flexible and dynamic your planning becomes. I personally like and use agile project management tools that allow planning for uncertainty. For example, Asana or ClickUp are two freely available tools you can try. To conclude, change is the only constant in our ever-changing world, and it is normal to be anxious about impending changes. However, every change is a chance to change for the better. As forecasting change is virtually impossible, adapting to it is a reasonable and successful strategy in these uncertain times. Thanks for listening. If you find my work useful, do consider supporting me via Medium membership or by liking, sharing or subscribing this video. Thank you so much.